So for those of you that have been onto the BDO UK website, you'll see the services. Who are we in advisory? In advisory, we are the services on what would be my right-hand side, combining not only the advisory stream, but the business services and outsourcing stream. And as you can see, it's a hugely varied selection. Now, what this slide doesn't set out is how we are structured and the various actual service lines that sit within it. So if I go to the next slide, this is probably the meat of it. So sitting within advisory, within BDOs, our business restructuring teams, our capital markets, our forensic, international donor assurance, mergers and acquisitions, a huge range. But the key point to this slide is these are services that are designed to help clients succeed. Services designed to understand the challenges clients face, and with appropriate sector knowledge and service line specific knowledge and industry experience, bring that to bear to support clients. So what does BDO UK want to be known as in the advisory market? We want to be known as the leading advisory firm. And that is quite a bold statement. But that's about us understanding the markets we operate in and making sure we have the right services to meet those needs. At the moment, within BDO UK, our advisory streams probably turn over circa $200 million. We are a substantial business. And with that substantial business, it enables us to invest in not only our people, but also the technology. And we have a number of aims in advisory. It's been independent, sustainably profitable business, but also a global focus. We're aware of the impact of COVID. We're aware of the forthcoming impact of Brexit. Our clients require support across the globe, not just within the UK. And being part of that BDO international network and working collaboratively with our colleagues in other countries, we're able to support our clients as they take either their first steps into the globe or multinationals coming into the UK looking to invest, looking to acquire businesses and helping them meet their business objectives. But it's also important about the kind of individual we want to join BDO UK and advisory. What we're after is we're after people that are naturally curious, people that want to make an impact, people that want to have a go, people that want to challenge themselves, but also people that behave collaboratively. It is no longer good enough to be really good in one particular silo and service line. You need to understand the entire service offering of the firm. You need to be that conduit with the client that enables you to understand their needs and then present the firm appropriately. What I've been asked to do is also cover some of the clients we deal with. And as you can imagine, as a $200 million business, we deal with a lot of clients in a huge range. So I'm just going to really briefly cover 7 clients that have been serviced out of our advisory market. We act for a leading not-for-profit organisation that has been really impacted by the impact of COVID. They've worked within the sports industries, and as you know, a lot of the sports industries around the UK have been effectively put on stop. And we've been working with them, helping them understand the impact of COVID, what they can do about it, what steps they need to take, and how to mitigate the risks and losses they have been facing. We've been working with the local council, supporting their small and medium enterprises, working with them so they can actually distribute grants needed where those grants are required by their clients at the right time, and providing a support mechanism to enable them to answer questions. We've been working with a PE house, a private equity house, who've asked us to look at their portfolio of companies and understand the impact of COVID, not only where their organizations have been adversely affected, but actually where the opportunities are, because there have been some opportunities coming out of COVID. I think I read yesterday that Amazon is the perfect company for a pandemic, and you've all seen the phenomenal results Amazon have had over the last 7 to 8 months. I appreciate a lot of these case studies are COVID-based, but COVID has had such an enormous impact on where we sit today. We've worked with a major manufacturing organisation in the UK, one of the FTSE 250, and we've been using data science to help them understand the data as it comes in from their various operating units and using it to reforecast what the impact of the various government pronouncements are. We've been working with a major logistics organisation and its supply chain risk. It's not just the risks that organisation faces, but it's actually looking down the supply chain, looking at critical providers of services and material and what the impact of COVID might be on them, and therefore what the impact will be on this organisation. We've been working with a clothing retailer, looking at how they can best restructure themselves in order to protect the business as they go through major changes in their operational units. Another good example, and I'm conscious the real meat of this presentation is going to be Nikki and her experiences, is in sort of our business services and outsourcing, where we've been working with an organisation like, I don't know whether anybody on the call have seen Cut the Rope. We've been working with that organisation from the day it started when it presented one invoice. So we've now supported them going global, all around the world. They're now working out, I think, about 110 countries, and supporting them in the challenges they face as you take those first steps, as you go from a startup to a major mid-market organisation. So appreciate this is a very quick 5 to 10 minutes, but I just want to give you a flavour of just the diversity that sits within advisory. One organisation or one stream sitting within advisory, it is worth mentioning because I can see it sitting in front of my screen, is our international institutions and donor assurance. This is a major part of our business, and we provide assurance to organisations like the World Health, United Nations, the World Bank, about ensuring that the grants and the projects they're funding around the world, that those monies are being correctly used to deliver the objectives. And that requires us to deliver support logistically, I think over 89 countries around the world. So, bit of a flavour, advisory is constantly changing, as you can recognise. The market is changing, clients' demands are changing. And we require people and services that are able to adapt and to meet those continuing demands to ensure that we stay relevant and we continue to grow. Now, on that note, I've done my canter through, and I'd like to hand over to Nikki.
Thanks, Miles. I am also going to attempt to share some slides at some stage. So if that could be enabled, that would be great. But for now, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Nikki, as it says on the tin. I work in the forensic accounting team at BDO up in Manchester. Though obviously at the moment I'm working from home, as is most of our business. It's been quite an interesting transition to experience within an accounting firm. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was probably in a similar boat to you. I was trying to work out, I was pretty sure I wanted to apply to a graduate scheme with an accounting firm, but I wasn't really quite sure what accountants did on a day-to-day basis. And I would go on to websites and I would look at the different advisory streams, for example, or look at audit, or look at tax. And I think to myself, what do you actually do on a day-to-day basis? You know, what literally you sat in front of your computer doing? So I'm going to try and give you a flavour of that. And I'm also going to try and give you a bit more of the big picture, because the very short answer to the question as to what accountants do is most of us play with spreadsheets a lot. And as you get more senior, you might be writing reports and liaising with clients, so you can do that at any level. So a mixture of spreadsheets, reports and meetings, which doesn't sound super exciting, but it's the subject matter which is particularly interesting. And that's what I'm going to explore a bit more, and some practical examples of what I have been doing in forensic and what we typically do, but also possibly looking at some of the other streams. My expertise is obviously with forensic, because that's what I have experience of, but I've worked with some colleagues in our business restructuring team, for example, on some of our jobs, and our risk and advisory services team, so I can give you a little bit of an idea of what those different streams involve. I am going to bring up my first slide. Let's see if we can make this work. Key question is, I seem to be sharing a screen that has Zoom on it. That's not helpful, is it? Miles, can you update me? Can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
There it's up, Nikki, well done.
Brilliant. I got there eventually. Thanks for your patience. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through what a forensic accountant does from the perspective of the clients we might work with. So instead of what does a forensic accountant do, I'm going to slightly flip it on its head and say, let's imagine you're a business. When would you need a forensic accountant? Let's say that, you know, after listening to my presentation today, you think, accounting is definitely not for me. I'm going to go and start my own business. And you go off and you do a bit of research and you think, do you know what I've always wanted to do? I have no idea who's on the call and what sort of businesses you might come up with. But let's imagine that you've always wanted to set up a wedding planning business. In fact, let's imagine that you packed in uni a couple of years ago. You decided, you know what, I'm going to go straight into business. I'm going to set up this wedding planning business. And in 2009, you had your first year of trading. And it was going really, really well. You got a great reputation. You had a lot of customers. Your business plan, you were outperforming all your sort of initial expectations, and it was going fantastically. And then 2020 came along. And as you may be aware, in 2020, we have had a global pandemic. And specifically in the UK, the government has introduced quite a lot of different restrictions on when weddings can take place, how many people can be involved, and then some more guidelines about what food can be served. And your wedding planning business is really struggling. Partially because a lot of weddings can't go ahead, and partially because you're slightly reliant on big weddings. And big weddings have not been allowed for quite some time now. So you think, oh, help, what am I going to do? Oh, hang on a minute. Thankfully, last year, someone advised me that I should take out some insurance. And you check your insurance policy and you realize you are covered for a pandemic. And you think, great. And so you speak to your insurer and you say, I've lost all this money, please help. Can I claim it? And they say, absolutely, you can. Can you put together a sort of a schedule showing what your losses are? And you think, oh, I don't really know how to do that. And they say, don't worry, you need to talk to a forensic accountant. We'll recommend someone. So in that scenario, then this is something I've been doing quite a lot recently, as you can imagine, that a lot of businesses that we work with have been really quite seriously impacted by COVID. It could be taxi services, it could be aeroplane companies, flight companies, it could almost every business has been impacted by COVID, positively or negatively, as Miles said. Amazon is doing pretty well. I don't think they need any insurance at the moment. But a lot of the businesses we work with have been really quite badly hit, and so need to be able to quantify what their insurance claim is. Now, I might use the word quantify or quantum quite a lot on this call because it essentially, a lot of what a forensic accountant does is coming up with a figure, a trusted, independent figure for what someone has lost or what something is worth. There's another thing we do, which is called investigations, but I'll get onto that later. So you're trying to, if your business is suffering, you're a wedding planning business, so you get in contact with a forensic accountant, and what we'll do is we'll say, okay, well, show us how well you were doing last year, send us some management accounts, we'll ask them for all sorts of information that we can then analyze and come up with a really good, independently sort of verified piece of calculation for the insurance company. So the insurance company goes, great, an independent forensic accountant looked at this, they put it together really well, looks good, let's pay your insurance claim. So that's one of the things we do. The kind of, it's all sorts of different clients I've been working on with COVID, but it's not restricted to COVID. You might have a loss of profits in your business in many other circumstances. So there was a tool manufacturing company we worked with who had moved into new premises. They were expanding, they were really excited. Unfortunately, the manufacturer of this premises had, I won't say been a bit dodgy, because I'm not sure that was ever proved, but had provided them with a premises that was not up to scratch. A few months into using it, the machines that they were using, which move around a lot and were very heavy, created massive cracks in the floor, and they had to stop all their production. And so again, although they in that case, they were actually taking the manufacturer to court. They weren't approaching their insurance company. It was a more adversarial situation. And the interesting thing about these cases is when I'm talking to clients about their businesses which are suffering, they're really, as you can imagine, quite an emotional thing for them. They are talking about their baby. This is something they've been working on for so long. They really care about their staff. They really care about the business doing well, and they're just gutted at what's happened. So you kind of, it's nice to be able to be there for them and kind of help them through what is really quite a difficult situation using our expertise. Okay, so you've, oh, my first slide was your wedding planning business. Ta-da. Oh dear, COVID happened. I got so excited at talking to you about my job, I forgot to actually use the slides. Okay, so it's all going well. Let's imagine that the vaccine gets rolled out in 2021. Everything starts going fantastically for a business again. You've got your insurance payout, you've managed to survive, and suddenly all these weddings come in because everyone's been on hold for ages, and you're doing more business than you've ever done, and it's just going fantastically. You take on more and more people, you expand, and then one day you realize, or you suspect, that one of your employees is defrauding you. You're not quite sure, but there's a few suspicious things that have happened. And the difficult thing with this employee is they're actually quite a good friend of yours. They've been involved maybe from quite early on. They've got quite a lot of responsibility within the organization. You don't want to think that they're stealing money from you, but you're beginning to think that they are. So you think, what am I going to do? You need a forensic accountant. So you contact a forensic accountant, maybe you contact my team, and we say, okay, we'll come in, we'll dig through your accounts a bit under the guise of being perhaps just a standard auditor, but not to raise anybody's suspicions, and we'll just see what's been going on. There's often particular red flags you can look out for with fraud, because it can be done a lot of different ways, but there are things that get repeated every time. There are certain ways that you could hide money in accounts or hide transactions that happen. And interestingly enough, fraudsters are often actually in quite a senior position within an organization. So your typical fraudster is actually male, usually more towards middle age, usually has a quite senior position within the company. And the reason for that is often in order to commit fraud, you need to go undetected. So if you're the bottom line person who's authorizing all the transactions within that business, no one's watching you, so you can get away with it a little bit more. And the other thing that they often have in common is they have a sort of sense of grievance. Because most fraudsters don't go, this is wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. They say, I really deserve a pay rise, but I've never been given one. You know, I deserve this. Or this company's been treating me unfairly for years, I deserve something back. You know, they justify it to themselves. And I won't go into the way that money gets hidden in accounts because it's quite technical. But there are quite a lot of red flags you can look out for. Okay, so what does that look like practically for me? It might look like one of our clients was created refrigeration vans for supermarkets and delivery companies, and they suspected their FD, their financial director, was committing fraud. And he was one of the founding directors of the company. I think the other two directors thought, you know, again, didn't want to suspect their friend who they've been running the company with for 15, 20 years of committing fraud, but brought us in. We went into the company and I essentially got put into a little back room, got given access to their accounting records and started going through them with a fine tooth comb, not in a random way because you'd be there forever, but again, selecting a sample of kind of typically high risk areas where we expect to see fraud happening, and just going through and seeing if we could see anything. And the kind of transactions we found were just invoices that you wouldn't expect. An invoice for a hot tub. You sort of think, okay, why has a refrigeration company bought a hot tub? Who signed this invoice off? Ah, it was the FD. Similar things to that. Okay, so your company has made it through the pandemic. They've managed to get through this fraud. The forensic accountants have helped them prove that unfortunately your friend was defrauding the company, so you've got rid of him or her. and you feel a bit gutted for a while, but you recover. Where are we now? Are we in 2021, 2022? My fictional future company that you're running. I think we've got to 2023. Everything is going well again. Fantastic. Now you trust all your staff. You've probably put in a few extra controls to make sure that fraud doesn't happen again. Maybe you've taken the advice of someone from our risk and advisory services team who will come into an organization and basically have a look at what can go wrong and advise you. It might be fraud, it might be other things. Advise you to put in certain controls or safeguards to stop that sort of thing happening. But you're doing great. You're really confident everything is running well. And then in 2023 or 4 or wherever I've got to, I've lost my timeline now, you get into a disagreement with the person that you founded this business with. I've got to tell you that. You founded it with your best friend, not the person who's defrauding you, someone else. You went into this business in partnership. You're both shareholders, but you fall out big time. I could get quite soapy right now, couldn't I? No, I won't do that. You just fell out. I won't go into the reasons why. Unfortunately, business partners falling out does happen quite frequently. And interestingly enough, I suppose you'd expect this really. When you go into partnership with somebody and set a business together, you often don't really tightly define the terms of what will happen if you do fall out. It's a bit like getting married. Most people don't actually get a prenuptial agreement. They're not expecting the marriage to collapse, and people who are joint shareholders or partners in a company will similarly not think about what will happen if they fall out. Sadly, it does happen. And your friend, let's call her Ruth. Ruth says, do you know, I just can't work with you anymore. We've tried to work this out, but, you know, I want to do these types of wedding planning. You want to do that. You want to take it in a completely different direction to me. We just can't agree. You're going to have to buy me out. I don't want to work with you anymore. So you go, okay, you both own one share in the firm, say, in the company. And Ruth says to you, okay, I want £1 million for my share. And you say, okay, I'll give you £1. And you get into a standoff about how much the company is worth. How much is Ruth's share worth? She owns 50% of this company. How much is that company worth? And how much something is worth is one of the key questions that forensic accountants and our colleagues in the valuations team think about. Valuations is essentially you're valuing a company or maybe a piece of intellectual property or an asset, usually a kind of an intangible asset, which means not like a machine or a computer, but the brand Google or the piece of technology that allows an app for a bank to work. And they're quite difficult to value because there's not a sort of open market for them. So you have to engage a forensic accountant or someone from a valuations team to give you a hand. The valuations team tends to deal with situations where it's not contentious. Perhaps the company, let's say your wedding planning business, bought the brand of a really popular wedding planning business. I don't know, Weddings R Us or something, and they're not quite sure how much to pay for that brand. And they're also not quite sure how much it should be valued at as, I'm getting quite technical here, aren't I? Essentially, HMRC would often need to sort of understand how much this brand is worth for tax reasons. But the forensic accounting side often gets involved where it's contentious. The reason for that is that forensic actually means suitable for court. So if I think I Googled forensic careers briefly before this presentation, and the sort of top things that came up were crime scene investigator, toxicologist, some other stuff, and it kind of immediately makes you think of crime or of CSI or of silent witness and all that sort of thing. Disappointingly, there is not a section in this presentation where I'm going to tell you how I help deal with dead bodies. It's not going to happen. But the word forensic means suitable for court. So the reason you have forensic crime scene investigators is they need to gather their data and their evidence in a way which will be admissible to court. And in the same way, I, without getting blood all over me, need to put together my workings and my reports in a way that is suitable for court, there are quite a few guidelines that you have to follow. So when two people are falling out and they're thinking, I think I might want to sue you, or we need to get the courts involved because we can't agree, then a forensic accountant will get involved because their report will be able to, they'll understand what the court process involves. So what would I do in that situation? As a forensic accountant, you and Ruth have got in touch with me and said, she says it's worth £1 million, I think it's worth £1. Who's right? Well, I'd write a report. I'd take a look at the company. I'd take a look at how much it had been earning over the last few years. I'd take a note that you had a really bad year in 2020, but actually there was a one-off reason for that. So you shouldn't really take that into account too much. I'm not expecting another global pandemic, fingers crossed, in 2024. But have a look at the history of the company, and if the company was doing really well every year, the profits were growing, you'd sort of think, okay, let's compare this to some similar companies on the market who are growing that way, who have a similar turnover. What have they sold for previously? And you kind of get, essentially the valuation of a company involves a more technical than this, but a kind of number crunch between how much you earn every year and roughly how many years worth of profits people are willing to pay for in advance when they buy a company. So you crunch all those numbers together and you say, okay, we've decided the wedding planning business is worth £250,000. And they go, okay. And then either they'll agree at that stage if they're wise, or they might go on to court, and then a judge will say, well, your independent forensic accountant did say it was worth £250,000, so you should have settled earlier. This was a very expensive and pointless process. Can happen. Usually doesn't. Usually people are sensible and realise that going to court costs a lot of money, so they don't do it. Is there an example I can talk about specifically with types of dispute? Disputes aren't actually always between two people that own a business together. They might be between two different businesses. So I was working on a job where there was a company that owned a series of care homes. They'd been family owned for a really long time. They were really proud of kind of how much they invested in each of their individual clients and how well they took care of everybody. But these two owners were getting a bit older, and they decided they were going to sell. And when you sell a company, basically you have a few agreements just to sort of cover both sides, because you might come up with some fantastic proposals about how that company is going to make loads of money in future, and then it might turn out to not be quite so true when the buyer gets the hold of that company and thinks, hang on a minute, this looks very different to what you told us. So you have kind of an agreement in place to cover you in that situation. And these two guys had sold their care homes, and the company that had bought their company had decided that the evidence that they'd provided about how profitable their company was, or how many how many clients it had, and various other data like that had been wrong. And so we were brought in essentially as kind of an independent decision maker. Very occasionally, forensic accountants might even be, two parties get together and decide, okay, we'll have an independent forensic accountant. They'll actually make the decision. We won't go to court because that's usually expensive. Oh, there's a name for it. I'm afraid I've forgotten what it is. But one of the bosses I work under had been appointed as the kind of decision maker on this, and gathered a load of data from both sides, and decided that actually some of the data had been insufficient, but most of it had been. Gosh, that was a more boring story than I anticipated it being. The work was really interesting. I was combing through a lot of different accounts and learning a lot about care homes. And I think that's actually, if you work in advisory, to a similar extent, if you work in audit and tax, the other kind of two big areas of accounting, you really get to know all sorts of different businesses. But the lovely thing about most advisory work is that it's just that little bit more varied. You're often working with different clients because you typically work with a client when they're going through a period of change. Oh, I've lost my slides again, I've just realized. We're still on fraud. This was the dispute slide with stock photo wording still there, looking lovely. In advisory, you're typically working with clients that are going through either some sort of a change or some sort of a crisis. Obviously, I suppose you could argue that crisis is just a very extreme form of change. And therefore, they're often not coming back to you more than once. In audit or tax, you might work with the same client for 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years. But certainly for forensic, a lot of the clients that we have are in crisis. They're in some sort of dispute, or something's gone wrong and they need the help of a forensic accountant. And when hopefully when we've helped them, we might not see them again ever, which means that you get to experience a lot of different businesses, whether they be in manufacturing, whether they be in services, providing care homes, doing wedding planning. There's a business we're working with at the moment that do intravenous drips, manufacture intravenous drips for therapies. It's really interesting. All sorts of companies that you never realize existed, and you think, oh yeah, you know, how do you work? And you get to find out a lot about them. So if you're interested in businesses and interested in how they work and how they tick, and interested in helping them overcome these periods of change or periods of crisis they might be going through, then advisory might well be for you. So we've talked about, I'll flick back through my slides. We've talked about businesses losing their profits, going through a kind of a time when they might need insurance. We've talked about businesses trying to deal with fraud and fraud investigations. And we've talked about businesses getting into disputes. The other types of situation a business might find itself in, where you might need not a forensic accountant, but someone from our wider advisory team. Let's say your wedding planning business does so well, you decide you're going to buy 3 other wedding planning businesses, and you're just going to get huge. Then you might need to speak to our mergers and acquisitions team. Let's say maybe you get really huge, and then you think, actually, that one business we acquired, I'm not sure they're a really good fit. I think we're stretching ourselves a bit thin here. And then I think you'd need to speak to someone from our transaction services team. Miles will probably be able to correct me. But mergers and acquisitions and transaction services, buying or selling. You as a company are buying or selling other companies. You want to expand, maybe you want to trim yourself down a bit. Or perhaps actually during COVID, you are struggling so much from a cash flow perspective that you realize you're going to have to shut down. I think it's Arcadia that are currently in talks with administrators. I think I haven't actually Googled the latest on that. They might be in talks already. They might have appointed an administrator. But you need to get someone in from business restructuring who will talk to you about, okay, can we change your business to help it survive? Or are we going to have to, can we find a buyer for your business that will take it on and maybe change it and be better able to handle it? Can we split your business up into different bits and sell them off? Or ultimately, do we have to wind your business down because it's unsustainable? So that'll be our business restructuring team looking at things. I talked about valuations when you're a business that's trying to buy sort of an asset or perhaps a single other business. How much is it worth? All sorts of different situations that a business might go through when they might need advisory services. And as Miles said, if you're interested in helping businesses succeed, helping clients succeed, then it can be a really rewarding career. I meant to be tried to be monitoring the chat box, but I couldn't really do it whilst presenting. So I'm going to try stop presenting and see if there have been any questions. I'm afraid I've been ignoring it the whole way through, so apologies if you've been trying to get in touch with me. Okay. Oh, but quite a few. Scroll to the top. COVID-19 has given multiple opportunities for many companies and businesses. Therefore, what are they for BDO, and what is the position of BDO regarding the freshly graduated student, considering the pandemic and the lake of opportunities? Wow, that is a big question. Okay, so yes, there are a huge number. Whenever there's some sort of crisis, there's opportunity. There are challenges to be addressed, but there are also opportunities, and often you'll get a lot of kind of new startups or perhaps small companies that are just in the right place will suddenly explode. I give you Zoom. Had you heard of Zoom before COVID? I had not heard of Zoom. Within 2 weeks, I knew how to use it. I had a subscription. That company has done very, very well. I assume. I haven't looked at their accounts. So there are lots of opportunities. What are they for BDO? Ugh. I can't really speak for BDO as a whole. And one of the very interesting things from my perspective, and I think is really going to impact a lot of professional services firms, is that, as you can see, I'm working from home. Somewhat non-professional setup. I tried to get a kind of BDO background going, but it did not work. So you can see my hats and my wallpaper, my terrible wallpaper. I need to replace that. But this has become a daily reality for me. I had a call with some clients earlier. Previously, we all would have been in suits and smart clothes and have met in someone's office. And now we're all working from home and not dressed quite as smartly as we might otherwise have been. Children interrupting calls, cats interrupting calls. It's been a very interesting experience. And I think that there probably is going to be quite a long-term transition if you're working in a professional services firm as to what your daily life is going to be like. I don't know what that's going to be yet, because we haven't got there. We haven't got to the other end of the pandemic when people actually get to make a choice and you kind of see what the long-term implications are. But that's going to be very interesting for BDO, and actually means that for me, working in the Manchester team, BDO is a fantastic company to work for, and all the different regional offices talk a lot together anyway. So we're very well connected. But for certain jobs, you sort of need to be on site. At the moment, I could get involved with any job in the UK. If I find something particularly interesting, or I speak to my manager and I say, I'd really like to kind of develop this particular skill set. There's this job up in Glasgow, or that job down in London, or this job over in Belfast, I'd really like to get involved with. The opportunity is very easy at the moment because someone from London or Glasgow or Belfast will also be working from home. So there's no kind of advantage to where you are. How are we doing for time? I think we've got plenty of time. RMP, please correct me if I'm wrong. So
yes, we've got 20 minutes left and you're good to go. So I think
I need to make sure I leave room for Adriana to talk through different roles and stuff about BDO at the end. Adriana, if I go on too long answering questions, just interrupt me. Okay, where did we get to?
And if any questions don't get answered, we'll follow up. So if your question isn't answered by Nikki, Adriana or Miles, then we'll get in touch with you and get your question answered. So don't worry if they can't answer it today.
Miles, do chime in at this stage. I'm currently lord of the Q&A. Sorry, you also, this question had quite a few different questions in it, and I want to answer all of them. What is the position of BDO regarding graduate students? I'm assuming what you mean is, are we going to be taking any on board? Yes, we are. As far as I'm aware, we're taking on more than we've ever taken on before, because in times of crisis, people need accountants, and we're in a time of crisis at the moment. So actually, we've got a lot of work on, and we need bright, enthusiastic, new young graduates who are willing to get stuck in. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, how has COVID-19 affected your daily work life? Has it been difficult to adapt? Well, as I was saying just before, I've been working from home. Actually quite enjoyed it. I work in a, my own experience of BDO is it's a really nice firm to work for. There's a lovely culture. Have a look at the culture report that got released recently if you want to get a feel for what it's like to work here. And what kind of priorities the leadership have when it comes to creating a culture that's good to work in. You know, and so it's a nice firm to work for, and my team is lovely as well. I really enjoyed going into the office and being in that environment. We would often hang out together at lunch and have those little breaks during the working day when you just chat to each other, because you can't work solidly for 7 hours without looking up and chatting to somebody. It doesn't work. As you may have experienced working from home, you simply have to put in your own breaks. So I have really missed working with a team. I see them every day on this kind of internal equivalent of Zoom, which is Microsoft Teams. But I think that's probably been the most difficult thing to adapt to. And probably, I don't know, I don't know to what extent that each of you have been impacted, whether you're still going to lectures or whether you've been actually, as students, doing a lot of work from home, as it were, more than you normally would be, and how you've adapted to that. But I imagine the challenges are quite similar. Sort of feeling a bit more cut off from people, having to invest a bit more effort into connecting with people and getting that, you know, essential connection that as human beings we can't really survive without, and kind of managing your own time, making sure you do allow yourself breaks. It's been pretty important. It sounds fairly standard, and but it has been really. I imagine that the challenges that I've encountered have been quite difficult to the ones you've encountered. In terms of my work with clients, they're often emailing us their documents that they would need to send us anyway. So it's not, we have been unable to go on site. There's an investigation that I'm just helping with the report with now, where we would have liked to have gone on site and seen some hard copy files, but just the government restrictions that were in the place at the time, we couldn't really do it. But we were able to interview people how we normally would, via Zoom or via video link. Slightly changes the dynamic of an interview. It's quite interesting. There are some advantages and some disadvantages. You can see people's faces quite a lot closer, and things that you might not notice in person, they might give away with their facial expressions. But they can also, they are hidden behind a screen, so they might find it easier to hide information as well. Anyway, sorry. You can do a lot of stuff that I do from home, most of it really. So professionally, not hugely impacted. It's more the kind of the sort of well-being side of it really. Okay, what is the scope of forensic accounting in today's world? Wow, infinite. The scope of forensic accounting is essentially the scope of court cases, and court cases specifically that involve some sort of measurement of quantum, which is this word I mentioned earlier, which is where the court decides, okay, it's your fault that this happened. You owe that person some money. We need an expert to tell us how much you owe them. And we would be the expert in that scenario. It would be a forensic accountant. The courts employ other experts for other different things. If, how badly has this person been injured in a car accident? They would need a medical expert. At what time did this person die? You'd need another medical expert. Can't remember what they call the people that deal with dead bodies. Well, my Inspector Morse has gone out of my head. But the courts have different experts for different scenarios, and when you sort of need someone to crunch the numbers, you need a forensic accountant. And the number of legal cases that are happening at the moment has not slowed down, and I'm not sure it ever will. It's a slightly sad reality that people fall out and businesses take each other to court quite a lot. And of course, with the other side of our work, the investigations, fraud is likely to become a bigger thing over the next couple of years based on what happened in the 2007 financial crash, not because fraud has increased, but because when companies are facing very difficult financial situations, they look a lot closer at their books and they start to spot things that they might otherwise not have spotted. And if you're a financial director and you have been sort of siphoning off money to the side, it'll become a lot harder to hide what you're doing because people are taking a lot closer look. And if your profits are a lot smaller, there's fewer profits to siphon off and hide. So I think fraud cases are probably going to increase in the near future. What were the biggest challenges as a trainee when working for BDO and for clients? 2, how did you overcome these challenges? 3, how do you distinguish between fraud and human error? I'm going to answer the third one first, because to a certain extent that's easy. Human error is an accident. Fraud is you did this deliberately. And one of the difficult things about investigations is that you might see that a person has completed certain transactions or moved money in certain ways, or it's not always hiding money. Sometimes it might be doing one of your mates a favor. Say you work for a public sector organization and one of your friends works for one of their suppliers, and you say, I'll give you this work. Even though you're more expensive and not quite as good as some of your competitors, I'm going to give you this work. That would come under an investigation because it's a misuse of public funds. And no public sector organisation wants to be guided by personal preference when selecting contractors. They want to be getting the best and the best value for money. So yeah, in that situation, an employee would argue, "Oh, I didn't know that's what was happening. There's another explanation." Sometimes there is. Sometimes there genuinely is. We might be called in, and actually, there's a job I'm working on at the moment, which is actually working on with our business restructuring team. There's a business that failed, and we've been called in to try and work out if the directors that were involved knew that the business was going to fail and kept running it anyway. It's called fraudulent trading, and it's illegal. As a director, when you know your business is going to fail, you have a responsibility to the creditors of that business, to everyone you owe money, to treat their interests above everything else. And But proving fraudulent trading is very difficult because the director will just say, I didn't know that we were sunk. I thought the business was fine. Or I knew we were having problems, but I thought we'd get through it. So it can be quite difficult to make that distinction. But the definition of the distinction would be fraud is deliberate, error is an accident. One of the biggest challenges as a trainee when working for BDO and clients, how did I overcome them? It's going to vary from job to job, actually, because each individual kind of stream has its own challenges. Forensic, one of the challenges is, as I mentioned earlier, our clients change all the time. And I'm never quite sure what I'm going to be doing. I don't know exactly what work I'm going to be doing next week. I certainly don't know what work I'm going to be doing in 2 weeks' time. There are some jobs that might come in. We're often waiting for clients to provide us with documents. So we might sign up a client, brilliant, we're ready to start. And we say, we need these documents. And then they'll take a week or two because they've got, their business to run, understandably. Perhaps they're just being a bit slow. So you're never quite sure. And then 3 jobs will arrive at once and they all have a deadline at the end of the week. Now, the trick about being a manager when you're an accountant is to try and manage that sort of thing so that your team is not overloaded. But it can be sometimes just a bit tricky not knowing what you're going to be working on next and managing your time and managing the client's expectations about how quickly you can do something, given that you originally said you could do it in 3 weeks, but that's if you provided the documents straight away and then they take 2 weeks to provide you the documents and say, great, you're going to have our report next week. And you say, no, we need 3 weeks from when you provided us the documents. So kind of expectation management with clients can be a bit of a challenge. That's just one of the skills you pick up. How did you overcome these challenges? I would say that there's a skill. Hi, I'm just wondering what Nikki was saying on fraud. How would you manage the different client dynamics in that situation? That's from Charlotte Van Her. I think your name has been cut off, actually. I don't think I can see all your name. I don't really quite understand what you mean by different client dynamics. Apologies. It probably made sense when you wrote the question and when I was ignoring the chat box. If you want to just type another question and explain a little bit more by what you mean by that, I'm very happy to answer it. Tyler Mitchell, would you recommend CPA or CFA? I'm assuming these are qualifications. I'm afraid I don't know anything about them because at BDO, the forensic trainees do the ACA. That's what I did. I think some of our business restructuring colleagues might take the ACCA. It slightly depends, but I think most of us take the ACA. I haven't taken any other qualifications, so I'm not really qualified to comment there, I think. But on the ACA, I think it's a fantastic qualification. It's hard work, but if you're interested in business, then it's actually, I found most of the exams very interesting. Taking an exam itself is stressful and challenging, but the material was fascinating. How did BDO adjust to COVID in terms of their relationships with clients? Are there any new ways of conducting business? This is kind of a question on a theme, isn't it? Is there anything new I can say here? I've said this before, but I'll emphasize it. The biggest change has been just chatting to clients over a video call. To a certain extent, it actually, I think, probably increases your relationship with clients, because for us, forensic accountants, one of the things I haven't mentioned is that often we're engaged by the lawyer of a company. So we're kind of communicating with the company through their lawyer. So we don't, it's mostly by email, and we don't chat to them quite so much. Whereas now, with the ease of a video call, I'd say we're talking to them a lot more often, and we're much more likely to put a quick meeting into the diary, say, great, thanks for contacting us about your insurance claim. Let's just take half an hour, more like an hour probably, can you run us through the documents you've sent to us? We've got a few follow-up questions about how your business works. We don't quite understand this. Setting that up as an office meeting takes ages. Setting up a video call takes a week at most. So that's been actually really good in terms of client relationships and the amount of kind of human interaction that you get in your job. I would have said that's that kind of biggest way we've been conducting our business. Probably. Are there any new ways of conducting business? The essentials are still the same. I still play around with spreadsheets a lot, and I still write reports. Aside from kind of the working from home and video calls, I think those are the main things. Miles, do jump in if you want to comment on that one.
Just pick that up. I think COVID and the pandemic has been a challenging time. We've been unable, in a number of instances, to visit clients' premises. But as Nikki said, actually, with the use of technology, I think relationships have deepened. I think actually, in a lot of instances, there's more communication. People are more, as Nikki said, quick to accept a very quick Microsoft Teams or Zoom meeting and just address an issue. I think also what it's done actually is, for me, and I think a number of the services and advice actually bind us tighter to the client. You know, you do get an insight or window onto the world. You know, as I can now see that Nikki's got a number of hats. You also pick those up when you're talking to your clients. You are seeing into their environment. The key point in all this, though, is we are a people business, fundamentally a people business. It is our people that engage with clients. It's our people that those clients see, and how they interact and how they behave. Clients will remember. And I think we were very good at BDO, very quickly touching base with all our clients, be it a single service client or a client that buys multiple services, and understanding their challenges and their issues, and also just engaging. You know, one thing you can guarantee in this world, that if we as BDO aren't talking to our clients, another professional services organisation will be. So we need to stay there, we need to understand them. And also, we require those people that are talking to our clients to understand the rest of the services that BDO can bring and identify opportunities. As I said right at the start, this isn't about people sitting within a individual service line. When you're talking to clients, you are representing BDO. You have the full support of BDO behind you. And it's that you bring to the table. So really important, as Nikki said, you know, we want people that are curious, ambitious, personable, willing to challenge themselves, and just understand how we can help a client and understand how BDO can do. So, you know, it's been a terrible time, but actually I think we've got bound tighter to our clients now than we were pre-COVID. And the challenge is to maintain that. You know, there have been some really interesting benefits from COVID. You know, Nikki's not wasting time commuting. You know, you feel more productive. You've got to be careful that actually you don't spend your entire life living at work now instead of working from home. But what we're able to do, and it was mentioned really well, is if we have an opportunity in Glasgow, we don't expect Nikki to get on a plane to fly up there. She can immediately join that team and take part. And we're becoming increasingly location agnostic. And it enables us, and the opportunity for the firm is it enables us to access resource where resource sits and focus it on a client wherever that client is, and just be far quicker and more agile in our service delivery. So we're managing it, we're still learning, but I think there's huge potential for us to actually continue to develop and grow as a firm. Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, Miles. Completely agree. Where have we got to? What made you join BDO over other companies? The answer to that question is they offered me a job, and I'd worked out that I wanted to do accounting a little bit too late in the application cycle. So actually, I think I was applying February, March, April, by which time a lot of accounting firms had already done a lot of their big interview days. So that Adriana will be able to talk probably a little bit more about this, but you do various online interviews, and then you usually attend a day where the firm can really get to know you a bit more. And I simply just missed out on a lot of that. But I did manage to get one at BDO because there was a forensic role that became available. So the answer to the question is they offered me a job. Why would I advise somebody else to join BDO? I think what I said earlier, culture. We have a really fantastic culture as a firm. I mean, we have really interesting clients. The work is really interesting. I'm not sure. I've never worked for another firm. I imagine that other firms have interesting clients and other firms have interesting work. But I think that we uniquely, having talked to other people who work for firms of a similar size, have a really good culture and a really good kind of tone from the top from our leadership about how much they care about the whole firm. So yeah, that's why I recommend BDO. Can you do a placement in a financial advisory firm? I think that's probably a question for RMP. I imagine you can, but I think that's outside of my field of expertise. Has COVID impacted relationships with your clients at all? I think you probably covered that actually. My personal favorite has just been the sort of slight informalizing of your relationships with clients, because inevitably a child or a pet crashes a meeting a lot of the time. And it happens to all of us. It happens on the BDO side with our children and dogs, and it happens on the client side. And it kind of, you sort of bond over it a little bit. About the crazy world of work at the moment. Are you taking on placement students? Adriana will answer that question. I believe we are. I think that's the point of doing this. As an economics student, would I be able to learn the key set of skills needed on site in order to join forensic accounting? Is there a learning program or institute, etc.? This is a good question, and I'm going to broaden it slightly. I'm going to imagine that your question was, can I get any specific experience that will enable me to apply for a forensic role? And my answer is twofold. The first thing is a lot of firms don't actually offer entry-level forensic roles. I believe that we do, but they pop up. They don't pop up nearly as consistently as the entry-level roles in audit or tax. And even I did go that route because there was a forensic role available when I was applying. But there wasn't any specific skill set they were looking at me to know already. So when you join a kind of a specialized area of advisory, it could be forensic, it could be anything else, they're not going to be expecting that you know how to do that job. They're going to be expecting to train you. So I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, definitely get experience, more for your own sake, to check that you would enjoy doing this job. And to show that you've answered that question. I think employers are less bothered that you come pre-skilled and more bothered that you really care about what you do. But Adriana can correct me on that one. Okay, 15 minutes left, sorry. Do I need to shut up now? I think I probably do. Is there any last question maybe? There's another question about skills. Again, I would say don't worry too much about the skills that you need. Worry more about whether this career is for you, and whether you've got the kind of personality that would suit this role. Don't worry too much about getting skills under your belt that BDO or any other employer would be impressed by. I think we're more concerned about who you are than what skills you have right now. Where do I find vacancies at BDO? Adriana will be definitely answering that question. Oh, Charlotte, hello again. Client dynamics. I'm just skipping through the other questions, and I can probably. Oh, you need to go at past. Sorry, I haven't answered your question. Apologies. Okay. I won't actually answer Charlotte's question because she's gone. Sorry, Charlotte. The final question I will answer is, if I'm in my final year, should I apply to a summer internship first, or can I apply straight into a graduate role? Again, Adriana will answer this, but I'm pretty sure you can apply in your final year, but you could also apply to a summer internship. I think both of those options are open to you. And on that note, Adriana, I will shut up now. You can take over and provide a lot more practical information.
Thanks very much, Nikki. I will share my screen with application process. Hopefully you can see this. First of all, I'll just start with introduction. So my name is Adriana, and I work in the early inquiry team at BDO, and I support London Advisory, London Tax Group, and Business Services and Outsourcing, and I help them to recruit our graduates for those teams. So I'll just quickly run through our application process. and I'll answer some of the questions that Nikki was talking about. But this year we have a very fast application process in comparison to last year, because it only includes 3 different steps. So you will be asked to submit an online application form, which is available on our website. So if you go to Early in Career website, you will find the Apply Now button in the right top corner. Then you will be able to search your role that you would like to apply for, and click Apply Now, submit online application form, and after that you will be invited to complete an online blended assessment, we call it, and I'll explain in my next slide why we call it blended assessment, but it is 45 minutes roughly. It is not timed, but it's just for your own benefit to know that it should take you about 45 minutes. So you will have blend of different questions and video interview, which is strength-based, 4 strength-based questions in the video interview, where you will be asked a question and then you will be asked to record your answers there. If you pass this stage, you will be invited to an assessment center, which is half a day. It's virtual this year, and hopefully after the assessment center, you will receive an offer. So as I mentioned, I'll go through Hypo-I, which is our blended assessment this year. It is a blend of numerical, verbal, and behavioral questions. And in that assessment, but also in the whole application process, we will be assessing things from these 4 different pillars that you can see on the screen. So we are looking at your cognitive ability, your learning ability, technological embracement, your resilience, passion, delivery, but really we're looking for potential in the application process. So we are not looking at you having huge amount of experience, because we do understand that graduates don't tend to have experience, and if you do and you have any transferable skills, then that's great to demonstrate at the assessment center. But you can also demonstrate your transferable skills from university. If you were completing any sort of project, you can still find some kind of skills that will help you to demonstrate those strengths at the assessment center. So these are just things to bear in mind when you're applying, so you know what we are looking at, what we are scoring in our application process. Just quickly run through our virtual assessment center. So we have 4 different activities that you will be completing, and it is group exercise, presentation with the SWOT analysis, interview, and written exercise. Group exercise is obviously in the group setting, so with other candidates and assessors. Presentation and interview is one-to-one with an assessor, and interview is with a director or partner from that team. Assessors are people from the team that you've applied to, so they can be your future colleagues. We will also, at every assessment center, we also organize a welcome from the business session where you can, it's a non-assessed session where you can actually learn and ask questions about that team, from clients, how it is to really study and work at the same time, socials, any interesting facts, anything that really you want to learn. So just utilize that session for those sort of questions. Just quickly, some hints and tips for your virtual assessment center. So you will be working as a group, so demonstrate your collaboration skills and teamwork. At each assessment activity, you will have some sort of task to complete, so please do cover all objectives. Do research at BDO, just to kind of talk from experience. A lot of feedback coming back from assessors to our candidates is that there was slight lack of knowledge of BDO and what we as a company do, what kind of service lines we have, but also to demonstrate your knowledge of the role that you've applied to. So please do as much research as possible. Read about our BDO culture report that was recently published, our values, which were recently published as new values after so many years having the same values, you know, different initiatives, citizenship, all these things that are important to you and can, you know, help you to learn a lot about the BDO as a firm. Then dress as you would for a face-to-face interview. Nikki was actually talking about that, you know, dressing up is not as important as it used to be as before, but at the end it is your interview, you want to make a good impression, so it would be good if you don't sit there in your pajama. Maybe you can have bottoms so no one can see, and spelling and grammar throughout the whole application process is a key as well. You are preparing a lot of reports to your clients, you know, sending formal emails to your clients and your colleagues. So just, you know, these your written communication is also important, and that will be assessed during the assessment center. But the most thing is to be yourself. If you're yourself, you are relaxed, you are the best version of yourself, and we believe that you will succeed and perform to your best ability. So make sure that you do all these things at the assessment center. But now I don't actually have anything else to cover in my slides. I just wanted to answer the question about an internship. So internship is actually for penultimate year students, so not for a final year. So final year graduates can apply straight into a graduate role. Internship is, so we target penultimate year students with the view that you can be offered a graduate scheme once you graduated. Not sure if there are any other questions directed to me, so I can help answering them.
There might be a couple of recruitment related questions in the panelist chat, Adriana.
Right. Sorry, Kitty, if you see any and can read out loud to me, because it's quite a lot of questions.
Yes, of course. Okay, so Isha has asked, when should they expect to hear back from BDO about self-scheduling and assessment centre?
Oh, yeah, I see that question now. Thank you. Right, so Isha, if you like to pick this directly with me, I can have a look at the role that you've applied to, and I can come back to you. At the moment, as you can imagine, we're experiencing enormous volumes of applications, so we may be slightly delayed with coming back to you and schedule the assessment center, but I can pick it up and with you each separately and see which role have you applied to. And if you like to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's an offer here, and I can have a look at your application and see what we can do there.
Adriana, there's a question in the Q&A box which says, what would you recommend for students interested in the industry but don't have any experience?
Again, as I mentioned before, there is it's gone slightly dark in my room, so apologies. It looks like I'm sitting in the room without the window, but as I mentioned before, we are not looking at your experience level, we are looking at potential. So if you demonstrate that you are keen to learn, you know, and how you demonstrate that you're keen to learn, the way, you know, in the way you've done the research to the company, the way that you've, you know, you've performed at the assessment center, the way that you come across, you know, show your passion when you're talking about it. But, you know, transferable skills, as I said, you can demonstrate even if you have not been working during your time at the university or before you apply to BDO. You still have been in the group that were completing a project. Have you been leading that project, or, you know, how what kind of challenging have you faced during that time? And, you know, just pick up things from your university that will align to that particular strengths that is being assessed at the assessment center, and you can demonstrate your transferable skills there. But you know, you don't necessarily need to have an experience. You know, we have so many. Even you don't have to have an education from like business management, maths. We have graduates that graduated from, you know, history or biology, or, you know, different topics that have nothing to do with accountancy. It's just for you to demonstrate that you want to learn, and, you know, you just need to articulate why do you want to join BDO and why that role, that team. And yeah, as I said, we're looking for potential, not for your experience. So there is the next question. Would be possible to get a graduate role without having a summer internship with the BDO prior? Yes, absolutely. We only have very limited space for internship, and that's for penultimate year students. But if you like to go straight to a graduate, there's plenty graduate opportunities open on our website, so you can apply directly there. There is a question about if the webinar is being recorded. I believe so, but I think it will be on RMP website. Not sure.
Yeah, the webinar will be recorded and emailed out to everyone who has registered, so don't worry, it will get sent out to everybody.
When do applications for the summer school internship program close? They are not open yet because we're still trying to work out whether we will go virtually or in person. And I think, given the circumstances, we will be doing 1 week virtual internship program in July. It has not been approved yet, and roles are not open yet, but we are planning to open them in January. So please keep an eye on our website and LinkedIn. We do, you know, we post updates. So it would be great if you connect with us on LinkedIn. The most important skills in a graduate. Do I still have time, Kitty? Sorry.
We're over time, but how about answer one more question, and then we will follow up in the email to everyone with the recording with all of the answers for any questions that we missed.
Perfect, thank you. So what are the most important skills in the graduate, besides having a great potential to be successful? So I'll just cover things that we are looking at the assessment centres and what we actually are looking for. So in the group exercise, we're looking for your collaboration skills, your negotiation skills, and ability to think on your feet. So it's great if you do your research and you know BDO as a firm, but then also to use and apply that in your presentation. So to demonstrate your understanding of the company. So that's an ability to think on your feet. If there is a question, follow-up question about anything to do with your presentation, that you actually, you know, can think on the spot and answer the question. And you know, the research you do beforehand and your homework will actually help you with that. So that's that. Then we're looking at your written communication, but also your presentation skills. So we will ask you to create a presentation and present it to one-to-one within in one-to-one setting. In the interview, we have different strength-based questions focusing on, again, communication, analytical resolver, your motivational alignment. Those are questions that are competency-based questions. And the last thing I will mention that will actually help you is our AMP framework. So if you try to Google AMP framework, which is Achieve My Potential, those 6 competencies are actually aligned in our application process. We do have them listed on our early in career website, and these will actually help you to understand competencies that we're looking for and scoring during our application process. So I think that would be great thing for you to learn and read about before you go into our assessment centres. I think we can leave it there.
Thanks so much, Adriana. Yeah, like I said before, I will make sure that everyone's questions are answered. We'll follow up with you guys via email along with the recordings. A big thank you to Miles and Nikki, amazing presentations. And what a lucky bunch we all are to have heard from them today. So thank you again, guys. And we'll speak to you all soon. Take care.
No problem. Thank you for organising. Bye all.